All right.
Okay. I need a bigger monitor. I have so much on this one screen.
I can get you a second monitor for your laptop.
That'd be really awesome. Also, I don't know where I would put it.
You would attach it to your laptop screen. They actually make second monitors now that just slide onto the back of your laptop and then you get another screen.
Really?
Yep.
Fancy. I didn't even know that existed.
What a time to be alive.
Right?
Hey, I'm making most of this technology, so it does make sense that I'm aware that it exists, but still.
It's true.
I don't even know. I can't, like, my brain is not understanding what this would even look like.
Right? Yeah, like I'm like,
Oh, I'm trying to see, do I have one handy? Because I have one of my other laptops here.
Yay. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
I love that everyone's starting in the chat already.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep. I have my chat popped out in float view, which makes it a little bit easier to handle.
So this month's topic is masculinity, which I can neither spell, sometimes not pronounce. I think Lior came forward their computer charger and maybe a couple of minutes.
Don't worry, I can't find it. So we're just gonna believe in our power to make this 49% last the full hour. I believe in it. I believe in it.
It's like the miracle of Hanukkah. If the oil lasted 8 days, then this charger situation is going to work.
Wait.
Hi, Raquel. Thanks for joining us in whatever capacity you're able to. We appreciate your presence being here. Oh, still got people coming in. Let me.
Are you ready to go over quick tips?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm just making sure all of the folks have. Cool.
All right, so a few things so we can navigate better. You have the option of speaker view or gallery view, and you can select this at the top right corner of your screen. You can drag that center partition left or right to make everybody's bubble appear on the side and to make the slideshow bigger or smaller. We ask you to keep your line muted when you aren't talking, and this can be found on the bottom left of your screen. If you have a question, you can either unmute yourself and speak it aloud or hit the raise your hand button. We'll invite you to speak, or you can type it into the chat and we can either invite you to read that or you can, we will read it for you. Please include your pronouns with your name, and you can edit these by clicking the little 3 dots in the corner of your individual square. And we do record audio and video from these events, so please keep that in mind and determine your level of participation. I almost said precipitation, based on that. And that's it. I think we're ready.
All right, we're going to introduce ourselves. You need to share your name, a pronoun, a feeling, and a movement. Who would like to go first?
Hello, my name is Brian. The pronouns are he, him, or they, them. Feeling a bit hungover. Yesterday was quite eventful. 3 events I went to yesterday. So Seattle is at 70% vaccination rate, so things are slowly coming back to life here. In fact, at the end of the month, the mask mandates will be lifted. So we're getting there, but I'm not throwing caution to the wind either. And so for my movement, well, since I just tumbled out of bed, and it's after 10 a.m. over here, I'm just going to have a sip of coffee. Ah, better.
Hi there. My name's Doug. My pronouns are he, him. I'm feeling kind of sleepy and tired today, and my movement will just be to roll my shoulders.
Here, we'll keep the ball rolling here. My name is Roger. My pronouns are he, him. I'm feeling, well, it's bright. I had to turn the lights down in here a couple of times. And my movement is moving.
Gazelle dropped in the chat. Hi, my name is Gazelle. My pronouns are she, they. Feeling tired. Movement is stretch above the head.
Hi, I'm
Hello.
Alexa. Oh, sorry, Marcus, go ahead.
I'll be quick. Marcus, they, them. I'm sick, so I'm not moving.
Apparently, it's just a sick and sleepy sort of day. I'm Alexia, she, her, generally, but anything's fine. I am also sleepy and a little spacey because I just got my second shot. And so now I have the post-vaccine blaze. So I'm just gonna like rub my face and try to wake up a little more.
Don't worry about it. It'll pass pretty quickly.
Raquel dropped in the chat. Her pronouns are she, they. Feeling moody. Movement, pillow hug.
We also have Carolina in the chat. Pronouns are she, her, feeling hot, overheated. Movement is closing your eyes using hands. And she says thank you.
Hi, I'm Danielle. My pronouns are ze, here, plus all. I'm feeling exhilarated and sleepy because I have a garden that I've been watering in the heat. And so my movement is just kind of a
I'm mirroring everyone's garden sentiments today. My name is Lior. My pronouns are they, them. I'm feeling a little nervous because I fly tomorrow and I haven't flown since COVID. So I'm feeling a little like light in my feet. And I feel like I want to make like space in my throat. That's my movement.
Hi, I'm Bunny. My pronouns are they, them. I'm feeling also sleepy. It's rainy here, so I just want to like take a nap. And my movement, I'm gonna give myself a hug.
All right, going once, going twice. Namesake, I see you haven't dropped yours in yet. So I'm looking at you. I can see you. All right. Shall we keep the ball rolling? So this is an uncensored art space. All bodies and body parts have potential to be present. We invite you to sit with discomfort if it comes up while tending to yourself as needed, or turning off your camera, focusing on your breathing, whatever you need to do. All right, let's share what everybody brought to the table.
So this is Evienya's work. She will not be at the event today, but she wanted to share her work with us anyway. So we don't have an artist to speak on this, so we can just start like talking about it.
Love the composition of the image. I mean, seeing the model primarily by mirror is interesting.
I love the color palette. They're like, to me, softer colors, like the pink of the couch or chair and the softness of the curtain for the window.
So to Lior's remark that it is an opulent style, one of the things I noticed is that there's a beautiful blend of both modern and Rococo elements here, because we have the modern chair in the foreground, but what the model is leaning against is in fact this beautifully gilded chair, very plush, very velvet, very, very rich fabrics. So this is definitely, as Marcus mentioned, like a Renaissance painting, but also just very timeless, as a comment from Raquel, that it brings a noble factor, but keeping it very simple and very natural. Gazelle points out, love the hard lines and the curves melding together in the composition. To keep us here and inspired in this moment, I would invite the chat to say what elements of this piece evoke our focus topic today. What evokes the masculine to you in this?
The more I look at this image, the more I enjoy it. I'm seeing the angular, anonymous positioning of just of the hand and the leg at a junction with itself, and that's what's in the outside world. But then what's reflected is so much richer and softer. Like the figure is like reclining, and so it's like this really gentle slope. It makes me think of like a hillside and a valley, and there's like a pool between the legs there, and then that bright little like plume of red. It's sort of, I love to speak to who made the comment about this, like the noble factor, Raquel. Yeah, like it sort of like there's an effortless richness and softness in there. Like there's the masculine shapes or the more angular shapes and the square framing even of the mirror. But then what's held within the mirror has like this organicness to it, and also that little vibrancy of like a little like peacocking happening, like just this little, like the brightest point of color is in the center, like in this space where he is being sort of dreamy and like holding himself in repose. And I think it's so beautiful. Raquel says, the mirror ornaments being heavy, impactful, brings a certain power to it. I would totally agree. Rory mentioned the nude body reminds me of Greek statues. Totally. This is the way I've been introduced to male nudity in the society I've grown up in, where the nude male body is seen as strength. So much to this piece.
To the comment from Doug, it is the definition in the model's abdominal muscles that also seems to evoke that topic. And so collating, I will say synthesizing the responses that I've heard here, many of them focus on the physicality, on the presence and the integration of the model in the environment from Arthur. We have getting some real Narcissus vibes from this one. Presumably both the flower as well as the poor, tragic Greek character. But it comes to which things do we associate? What terms are we bringing? And it seems like it is the heavy, the impactful. It is these hard lines also mixing with soft curves.
Any final remarks before we move on to our next piece?
I actually see some level of vulnerability because he's sitting on the floor versus using some of the furniture.
I find it kind of interesting that we're indirectly looking at the model. Like we can see the model's legs in the image, like without the mirror, but like most of what we can see of the model is through the mirror. And I think that's kind of interesting. Like, are we supposed to see them through this kind of portal? You know, it like brings a layer of depth to the whole image.
Especially since really what is the most masculine in this image, and you can say most, but the most focus on the subject is what the reflection is, not the object. So you could look at this as masculinity is a reflection of the gilded society. It's staring you in the face, except it's not.
To answer Rory verbally, and to kind of touch upon what Daniel says, there is a vulnerability from what I'm seeing from the image.
Arthur, I don't want to cut you off. It's really hard to hear you. Do you mind speaking up?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Thank you. So to answer your question verbally and to touch upon what Daniel was saying, why I got my narcissist vibes was in my interpretation of this, I'm looking at the vulnerability of the subject and I'm thinking to myself, the punishment of narcissists. And that's why it leads to the uncomfortability of it, the distancing from the furniture, the distancing from something that would be comfortable, the distancing that we're seeing because we're watching from an image. And those are the initial thoughts.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Something I was thinking about is if we had a female model in this position and the way that we're looking at it through the mirror, would that be objectifying? And is it objectifying because the gender of the model is different?
Well, we don't know that this model identifies as male. So one thing is that yes, it was submitted for a masculinity discussion and has the biological parts of a male, but we don't know that this individual is male. So
Thinking on that, one of the points that I would note here is, especially since given the way I approach it, you have the difference in genitalia between an innie and an outie. That's pretty much just how I think of them. So if you had a model that had an innie, based on the shadowing and positioning here, there would not be any revelation of any details of their genitalia. Whereas with a model with an outie, not only is it in the image and quasi-central, it is represented twice from two different angles. And given our society's focus on the phallus, just in all presentations, I would consider that an additional layer of vulnerability from this model, that having an outie visible from both front and side angles so that you can compare volume, all the things that you want to associate with that, is also a form of vulnerability that can both evoke the masculine, if you take the Scottish kilt mythology or mythos, or evoke the vulnerability in things that we might see as the obverse of that, as a softness. All right, as Lior said, any closers on this, or shall we move to the next?
That was good. I love it.
Hi there. So I was thinking hard on what I wanted to submit for this, and kind of wanted to represent something I think I mentioned in the last conversation about masculinity being, for me, sort of like an armor, something that a familiar set of armor that I can pull on and go out into the world and feel confident, feel strong, feel like I'm not going to be attacked, or something that I feel safe in some ways. And so I've submitted here 2 selfies, silly selfies that show various levels of that armoring, and then a photo by Lior from the Masculinity Project where the armor is all gone. So the one on my left, I guess our all left, the one with them wearing the mask, it was one I did recently while wearing some troll ears, and I went to Kroger, and I had my hat on, and I had the mask on, and I was wearing all black, and I just I felt armored up, and wearing ogre ears even more kind of transmitted for me that feeling of masculine strength, so to speak. And so while it's kind of silly to wear ears like that out in the store, and I did get a few looks and comments and things, I felt confident walking in there. My armor is on, and I'm just like, who cares what anybody thinks? Who cares what anybody says? I'm going to go do what I need to do and go on about my day. The second image, the one with the stuffed wolf there, is a playful image. I was at the park. It was recently after I had received that crocheted wolf, and I wanted to have some playful images of, and just kind of explore a little bit more of my inner child, so to speak. And so that's, you can see I'm smiling, I'm kind of open, I'm not wearing any hat, I'm just kind of in a t-shirt and just being playful. So a lot less armor is on, but I'm out where there's hardly any other people around to see me. I'm certainly doing stuff that makes me happy at that time. And then so I consider myself less armored there, but I could assume that armor as soon as I need to, if I had to. And then the third image by Lior, taken as part of the Masculinity Project. I like the black and white image of this. And this is where I've dropped all pretenses of all armor, just kind of being vulnerable with that photo set that we were doing. And we spotted this plant, like these grasses coming up in the hoop house, crossing hedgerows. And Lior suggested me getting close to that and just taking some images there. And so I just really love how it came out. My eyes are kind of closed. I'm just kind of relaxed, and I don't have any of that armor on that I would typically wear. And so that was kind of one of the points of the photo shoot. So I guess that's what I have to say on those, I suppose.
It's so cool to see some of your selfies mixed in here. I think the act of taking a selfie and documenting the self is sort of an interesting genre of art, and the varying degrees of masculinity present here.
So this one gets us right into the accoutrement of masculinity. So looking at our focus topic, what do you bring in? And so which elements in the first image can evoke the masculine side? And as Alexia has pointed out, the progression of masculinity armor. So in the first, the hat, and that hat has an iconography associated with it. And that iconography is extremely powerfully masked. It is, you can put that hat on almost any body type, and people will now have to work hard to shift it towards a feminine. You take the middle image, and that is the fatherly, since it is, I think it's Father's Day. Yeah, one call. Yeah. It is the elements of nurturing, of being present, of being vulnerable, but there's still strength there. There's the power of the tree. There's the richness and fullness of the beard. There is the bear in the background, and all these elements together are still that gruffness, but also this outer armor. But then with the last, we have the most evocative of just the masculine aspect of physiology. So stripping away all of the societal armor, we have the hirsute chest and the musculature and the beard, and that blending with nature and that return, that primal aspect that we see. And in the primal, there's another element that evokes this masculinity. And so looking at this progression of armors, they are swapping. So we go from the societal armor to the physiological. And where we meet in the middle is Doug.
Thank you, Roger. That's very poignant.
I really enjoy the fantasy aspects of the troll ears, and just making people question and ask, what are you looking at? What is this person presenting as? And I just love wolves, so I'm going to love that.
I love that you called it an armor. And I feel like with each image, we get a little bit closer to you, Doug. Like the image with the hat and the mask, we're like very like distanced from you, even though you're not that far from the camera, but we feel very distanced from you because we can like kind of see your eyes. Like you've got the glasses covering your eyes, you have the mask covering your face, the ears covering your ears, the hat covering most of your head. Like you're very covered, and it definitely does look a lot like armor. And then like as you go to the next image, there's like less covering you, and then continuing on to the one that Lior took, there's even less. And I feel like it's like you're revealing yourself to us, and like you're yourself in all of the images, but I feel like you're the most yourself when you have less of that armor on, if that makes sense. That's the feeling that I get.
Oh, definitely. I definitely feel like the last image, the one that Lior took, I'm most connected to who I am and to the world around me in that moment.
That then begs the question for you, Doug, is an aspect of masculinity connection or distance from the world around you?
Oh, I definitely think masculinity is I guess I compare it to an armor, because I definitely feel it creates that layer of distance that can take damage from outside and allow me to continue be who I need to be in a moment. It's a projection of strength. I mean, being white, male, middle-aged, presenting that way, I have a lot of societal protection to begin with. I'm not going to get stopped by police very often. I'm not going to get questioned by many people on why am I where I am and what am I doing. I'm aware of that. But yeah, for me, masculinity has always been something that if I sense there's any potential for danger or whatever, I feel myself kind of mentally putting that armor on, whatever I'm wearing, and just dealing with the situation, whatever it needs to be dealt with. Because when I'm feeling, hyper masculine, I suppose, there's a feeling that whatever's said, whatever's done to me is not going to hurt me. It'll pass, and I'll get through it, and then I can disarmor, and deal with things later on, emotionally or whatever. But it's when I'm not wearing the masculinity armor that I feel my emotions more, and I let them flow, and I'm not worried about, I'm just free to express myself, I suppose.
Two comments, one from Alexia, who is a huge fan of texture, and the softness of Doug's beard and the plushie next to the roughness of the tree in the center photo is just delightful. I can also imagine the hand motion that goes with that. And then from Gazelle, love the emotive softness that represents as masculine. Raquel responds, masculinity in a sense of shielding.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. At least in my mind. It has been for me, for all my life, And I think, I was in the military when I was young, 18 or so. I was in the military, went through basic training, and that was probably the culmination of me learning how to put on that armor, the basic training that you go through of, the physical strength, the endurance, the stuff, all the trials they put you through. And, it was a completely male unit of basic trainees and such. So drill sergeants kind of instilled that. It really felt that was like the most masculine I'd ever felt. I was a soldier. I was ready to kill or be killed kind of thing. And of course, that's what they teach you in the military. But it definitely felt that. And I think, the military does that same thing to those soldiers who identify as female as well, teaches them to toughen up or whatever, to take on that veneer of strength and to deal with situations. And I think, so I do think that masculinity is definitely something that, for me, and maybe for many others, is something that you pull on like a cloak or an armor and just get ready for battle if you need to. And then shed it when it's no longer of use, ideally.
I resonate with that statement. I find if I present more male, I can be safer in certain situations. But I've never found the ability to shed it because I always need it.
I just want to touch on what Bunny asked in the chat. So they said, does masculinity go away without violence? And I think that it has a different face without violence. I think that masculinity takes on, like, okay, I'm a father. Happy Father's Day to anybody to whom that applies. Masculinity, when it comes to my kid, is all about, making sure that my child grows up safe, making sure that she has everything that she needs, making sure that, she's protected and nurtured and cared for and fed and allowed to grow, right? And without fear of violence, there would not be the need for protection. I could focus on the rest, right? But being a Black parent of a Black child, there's the need to instill, a lot of protective things for my kid. I have to say, there are a lot of things I have to tell her about this world that no kid should have to deal with. It sucks. But for myself, it's kind of interesting too, being a non-binary person, the idea of masculinity as armor is like really real for me, because people assume that femininity is automatically vulnerability and that I can just be taken advantage of if I present feminine anywhere. And so yeah, I see, Roger, the talk. Yeah, we've had versions of that particular talk, but no, Yeah, as a non-binary person, yeah, putting on masculinity as armor is a daily occurrence for me. Like basically anytime I leave the house, it's just like I have a default shell because I have to, and the thing is like I can't take it off. Like people see me and they automatically think masculinity like it's a default. Like there's no removing that. And then that I have a bit of protection. I have to go out of my way to take that off. I have to like actually put in a lot of effort. I have a makeup kit over there that hasn't been unzipped in like 8 months. I have to put in effort to take that off. But in doing so, I am making myself a lot more vulnerable to abuse and mistreatment when I do that. So it's easier to wear the armor than not to, anyway, just wanted to touch on that. By the way, in case anybody's wondering what the talk that Roger is referring to, it's the police talk, not the sex talk. So
yeah, sex is survivable.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Marcus. Thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine. I can only imagine what it's like to be Black and male and perceived as male in society, and the need, and the hyper masculinity that is imposed upon those who appear to be Black and male, and the implied threat that a lot of society feels around Black and male is I think so real. It's something it was instilled in me by society growing up, and it's something that I constantly am fighting against and super aware of, and I go out of my way to avoid reacting to any perceived threat that my subconscious or unconscious is like weep, 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 alarms, and I kind of fight back against that every day, because I work in the city of Detroit. I work around Black people all the time, and I can't have that that hypersensitivity that comes or the threat of like growing up, people used to across the street to avoid being near a Black male when they're walking towards you or whatever, just perceived threat. Well, I constantly am fighting against that. But I would also just like to add that as a father, I didn't instill or always think of violence in terms of putting on the masculinity, but I did play the masculine role in raising my daughter, in the sense that where mom was there to be the comfort if something went wrong or whatever, I was there to kind of push her boundaries, to test her limits, and to do the fun things. I'd throw her up into the air and catch her, and she loved that as a child. I was always helping her to try and push her boundaries, and to that was what I perceived as part of my role in raising her. So I'll just go silent now.
I want to chime in on the fatherhood thing for a second. Okay, so one fun bit about my family. So there are 3 dads in this family. So it's me, my ex, who is a transgender man, and his husband, who is a transgender man. So this is the most interesting, it's the most fascinating family dynamic when it comes to raising a girl child, who, as far as we know, is a girl. She hasn't said otherwise yet. She thought she put on the name Steve for a little while when she was like 7, but she decided, nah, it's fine. But so what's really interesting is that she's starting to, she's 11 years old. She's, going through puberty. She's starting to understand some things. And it's really interesting because I'm the person who's showing her how to do makeup, as opposed to her other 2 dads who really, my ex-spouse especially was not, after a certain point was not particularly feminine at all. And it's really interesting to okay, so we have this weird dichotomy. Okay, so they are both fairly masculine people. I am not, but neither of them are athletic at all, and I am. And so I'm the one giving my kid coaching when it comes to her athletic pursuits and everything. and and anything she wants to do, it's like she inherited all her athleticism from me. But so it's this weird dichotomy. It leans into the whole non-binary thing. It's pretty great that I'm teaching her how to play sports and do makeup. Meanwhile, her other two parents are teaching her about her own biology more than I would, because they've experienced it. So it's pretty fascinating.
Oh, that's beautiful, and especially as it relates to this image. So I'm going to open it up to the rest of chat. Do we have any closing remarks on this image set, specifically as the topic that we've broached on our focus, the armor of masculinity and what it looks like? So we're putting out there, going once, going twice. Oh,
There's so much, but I'll let somebody else go first.
Since we're talking about real things, I will add in another cultural perspective of a different talk that I have in my culture, which involves what happens when you're presenting male and Border Patrol discovers, when they strip you down to put you in the cage, that you in fact have a vagina. And that is a very private, but now being made more public as these issues are being brought to light. And just the realness of what happens when you're male until you're not, and the dangerous things that you have to consider when you present male, and realize that when they find out that you've been lying to them, that there'll be a certain amount of anger that you will then have to face.
So in this case, masculinity can be both an armor, but also an anchor. And as Doug points out, when your armor is literally stripped from you, there can be repercussions, especially in that enhanced vulnerability.
So there is a, yeah.
You go, Arthur. I was about to toss it to you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was just jumping. Yeah, there's a multitude of different things that I want to go down, but obviously short on time. So I'm just going to focus on what Danielle said, which is succinct and perfect, and just adding to the idea of masculinity as a form of privilege, and what it allows you to. And that point, thank you for saying it so succinctly, which is once it's gone, you're an other, because we live in the society where, well, if it's not white supremacy, then it's patriarchy. Those are kind of like the big two, in addition to everything else, of course. But I think about this often as a presenting male, and the idea of, if you don't do that, like, and to touch on the women, to touch on feminism, the last little meeting that we had, when I learned about womanism, that was the kind of like the day I decided not to be a man anymore. And it's like a weird kind of thing, because to Marcus's point, you always have to, and let's bring more of reality into this, because it's also Pride Month. So, and you always have to come out if you're not going, like, if I go to work and it's the presentation of, like, clothes make the man, so to speak, which the perpetuation of that. If I go against that, if I buck against tradition, if I out myself every single time, like, then I'm an other, and then you have to deal with that. And that's like a private conversation that I've been having with in different queer circles, which is the idea of, like, the closet is kind of important. We can't really knock it. We're trying to get people out, but out to what? If society and the environment is hostile. So different points, but trying to keep this really focused, which is to Daniel's point, which is it's easier, so to speak, to present as male because of that privilege, because of that armor. I don't really think of it as an armor. I just think of it more like in the terms of privilege, in the idea of it's like it's a passport. It allows you to get to places. If you don't have that access, then you face, like, you need something. You need a pass. You need a cosign. You need something to allow you to go to these places, to because if you don't have those things, or you're actively rejecting those things, in my particular case, it's something a little bit different. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. And that's why I felt like this triptych is so important, especially with the masking. And it's another like different thing that we don't talk about. It's a different thing, like the way that we politicize masking and all these kind of things. And I've always thought about masking just like in taking because I was a theater kid and because I was fascinated about acting and putting on masks and all that kind of stuff. The actual physical mask in what we're talking about right now, about the presentation of masking and acting as performance or as in masculinity. So I thought that was really a lot of things that I wanted to wrap up in a couple minutes. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay. I think we're going to go to the next image on this one, but one, keep the conversation going in the chat because that is something that we can always digest later. So if you have thoughts on an image that has already gone by, you, like Marcus just did, masking, you and your corning of phrases, feel free to drop them in there. Can we go to the next slide, Bunny?
Y'all are so clever. I can't even handle it. Epiphany after epiphany.
Oh, hey, look who it is. Okay, so these pictures are about a decade apart. So when I first was modeling and then when I got back into it, and I picked these because like they say some very different things about me. So the first two were, as you can see, I had a goatee back in the day. So the first two was one of my really early modeling gigs. I was trying to be all cool, but also still like trying to be myself. You can see I have like the waist cincher on and everything there. Hadn't figured out my gender things yet, but it was starting to come together. And I was at the time, a Black man. I was working with a whole bunch of other Black models, a Black photographer, all this stuff. And Doug touched on the hypermasculinity aspect of Black manhood in particular. And I wasn't sure how to portray that in a way that felt like me because I wanted to be, strong Black man, but I also wanted to be myself. So that was an interesting thing to try and figure out. And that second picture, the one where I'm kind of crouching like Batman, like that actually kind of exemplified it for me. But it was still kind of, I was following the example of Black masculinity that I had seen via mostly BET. So I was doing kind of the, the gangsta arm cross thing. Second pick, yet waiting for the album to drop. Right, exactly. Yeah, it's my album cover. But yeah, no, but I still had, elements of myself, like I'm wearing like the leather cuffs and everything because I had just gotten them. I was really proud of them. My stompy Doc Martens. And the third picture is from 2017. I had just gotten really back into modeling. I was coming off of Ninpa, which is a whole story. But so this was shot in Pennsylvania, working with Howard Sturman, who is an amazing photographer. And so had shot a whole bunch of things, and we're just like, hey, we've got this, got this blank wall with these cool textures. Let's just, mess with it a little bit. And this was one of the shots that we came up with. And this is, of course, after I had figured out a whole lot of gender things. And I have the gold eyeshadow on and everything. And this picture is an example of how something I think I've said before, the more masculine I look to other people in terms of like my physicality and like how how like little body fat I have and how much my musculature is coming out, the more of that you see, the more masculine I look to other people, the more feminine I feel to myself. And that picture pretty much exemplifies that. There are other ones I could have gone with, but this one I think is the best example of it. And you can see by I'm like, pushing one hip out and the way that I'm standing and everything like that. It's it was one of the most comfortable shoots I'd been on. that was like a group kind of thing, but also it was this picture I feel like was the best capture of what my ideal gender presentation is, as far as like, short of like, me drawing a picture of myself. This is about as close as you can get, so yeah. But yeah, the juxtaposition of the two types of pictures was something I wanted to put in there, because basically the first two is basically what I thought masculinity was and what I thought I needed it to be, and the second one is this, and the black and white one is like, now this is what it is for me, and it's still, I still flow back and forth between masculine, it's a spectrum of masculinity and femininity, but that picture really exemplifies like what my type of masculinity is, and how I would like to present my masculinity to everybody else. There's a saying popular on TikTok right now. It's masculine like girls are. And there's another one, and then the other one is like a lot of like AFAB non-binary people want to be feminine like boys are, and a lot of us AMAB non-binary people want to be masculine like girls are. And that's kind of how it's really neat how that's come across on TikTok. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that, unless somebody has questions. I bet Roger does, because
You're wrong for that. You're wrong for that. I mean, you're right, but you're wrong for that. So, looking at these images, again, bringing us back to the focus topic, I ask you, the subject of both of these, but also one of the active collaborators, what was going through your head in terms of pose tension? So, as a model, especially as an active model, I know that you know how much effort it takes to isolate your abdominal obliques. Don't think I don't know what I see what you're doing up in here.
Yeah.
So I can see you've got flexure, and let's see, got the piriformis kicking in there. You got your calves. You are relaxing one set of toes while curling the other, making one fist to pull out your lats and deltoids, popping them out from the back. So that requires a great deal of concentration in order to perform what? What were you performing with the concentration part of your pose? Were you performing your feminine or your masculine?
Okay, so that was fun. So basically what happened in that picture, I was trying to flex my body and relax my face, which is hard to do at the same time, because I was like trying to bring as much of like a V taper and get like kind of like the X pattern there. So like, I was trying to bring my stomach in to make my hips look bigger, and also broaden my shoulders and everything, but relax my face at the same time, which is really hard. And so I had to. It was a lot of breathing. It was a lot of like concentrating on breathing and everything, and making sure that the muscles in my face did not reflect the tension everywhere else. And also, I was doing what in bodybuilding circles they call it a stomach vacuum. I wasn't doing it as hard as some people do, but I was like really trying to pull in my lower abdominals, because that pulls the obliques in, it pulls everything in, so it makes the waist and hips look larger. So, but yeah, the thing when you do that though, it makes your abs pop, which is automatically a masculine thing to people. So it's just like, what do we do? So yeah. But yeah, I was trying to get the V taper, get like the X shape, do the whole thing. And only, my hips can only look so big, because, bones are bones. So
yeah, so them hips don't lie. However, one of the beautiful points that you brought up here is not about the physicality of masculinity, but about the performance from a kinesthetic sense. So you have clearly delineated masculinity by telling us how, with your physical performance, you emphasize the feminine. And that's something I want to be sure everybody takes away from this, especially as an image, that you can define something by its absence, or you can define thesis by antithesis. So if you wanted that to evoke feminine, you need an hourglass. If you wanted to evoke masculine, you need the V taper with the T. And in this case, in having to do both, you create you. Because I invite everyone, take just the top third of this image especially with that hint of cleavage. What do you see now?
This black and white image was 100% feminine to me. Like I read it the second, like there's so much grace. I'm obsessed with your ankle and calf line right now. It's everything. And the way that those hands are just, that right hand is so, it looks so gentle. I could cry. I love it. And I think we have a few more art pieces to get through. And I know somehow it's 1:58 already, and I want to make sure that we have time for everyone. So are there any final thoughts and feelings, things you want to adore? I'm still like simmering on everything that has been said in this chat.
I just want to add one thing in here, something a lot of people have commented on. I know Rory has brought it up a lot. I put a lot of emphasis on my hands. You can see that in all three pictures. It's been something I've done since the beginning. So every bit of that is completely deliberate. The hands, just FYI, is extra bit of concentration that I had to put in. But since I've been focusing on hands for so long, it's really easy for me to do without thinking. So I had to think about everything else. My hands just did what they do. So.
Oh, that's a beautiful, that's a closer. That's a closer right there. All right, Bunny, can you take us to the next?
So I picked these three because they're three different styles of masculinity, although two of them touch on the same thing, which is one of pretty much my favorite compliment that I get when I'm modeling is people tell me that I look like David Bowie. And it's really funny because they'll be like, oh my God, you look like so much like David Bowie. No offense. And I'm like, why would I take offense to that? That's the best thing ever. Bowie's amazing. And so I feel like especially the bottom one and the right one have a very, the bottom one because it's the red hair, which anytime my hair is red, that like brings out the Bowie. But then the like 80s rocker vibes as well. Like some people would read that picture as feminine because of the long hair, but to me that's very much the 80s rocker masculine look. And I swear I had more things to say and they've just like flown off. So yeah, those are just like, yeah, no, I don't have words today, apparently.
Well, that's okay. I always have moderator questions. So in picking, in this case, your demonstration of masculinity, you have picked a particular era where the line between the masculine and feminine became a bit more blurred than it's allowed to be in other time periods. As Raquel points out, the rock and roll era. So, 80s hairband. What do you feel that was representing? Because you have this one form of hypermasculinity of do all the things, be loud, and also have extremely long hair and a ton of spray. Aquanet bidet. What does that bring from you in terms of the masculine aspect?
I think part of what I love about that era of masculinity so much is that it was throwing out a lot of what they'd been told masculinity was supposed to be. And it was just like, throw everything, throw it all against the wall, see what sticks, and just like, do whatever we feel like, and it's masculine because we're male, and therefore if I wear this, sequined top, it's a guy's sequined top because I'm a guy. Like, and I love that they took so much that was considered feminine and was like, nah, it's fine. We're just gonna do our thing. Y'all can deal with it.
It's the age of the crop top for everyone.
Yeah. And crop tops are great.
Yeah, breezy. Do we have anything particularly poignant from the chat that people would like to focus here on our presenter? Because there's some beautiful comments in here. So we've got the shoulder structure from Lior, 80s math, Annie Lennox from Gazelle, the rock and roll era from Raquel, the androgyny of glam rock from Rory, and the 80s hairband vibes from Doug. Marcus does point out the shoulder positioning does tend to stick out to him a lot, and that I would go with that. That is back to pose and presentation, how your kinesthetic sense can evoke masculinity, femininity, or other. And then Bunny notes that in all three images, the shoulder position is definitely evoking or evocative to them. So, given that people have mentioned it, Alexia, how much of that is deliberate? Do you work your shoulders the same way Marcus works those hands?
Yeah, 100%. If I am trying to bring a more masculine energy to a photo, there's very strong differences in how I position my shoulders, how I position my hands. Like you don't do, the soft fingers if you're trying to evoke something very masculine, just because of the societal scripts that everyone already, like, it's the shorthand. It's if I use this color for a villain, everyone knows that they're a villain. If I use soft hands, everyone will go, oh, it's feminine, cool. If I use stronger hands, if more of the back of my hand is showing, if there's more tension in the fingers, people are more likely to read that as masculine. And the shoulders, yeah, having the shoulders more square onto the camera, and like bringing the shoulders forward and dropping the chest back a bit, but still it's a weird balance of opening the shoulders but also dropping the chest back, and I'm not quite sure how to explain it. But it
is in fact primate behavior for aggressive dominance. In order to appear larger, you square the shoulders. That is direct confrontation, energy taking energy in opposition.
Mm-hmm.
Drop the chest back to help you radiate in your vocal cavity so that you can tell. Yeah, so, but it's knowing those scripts for performing. It's making those deliberate choices versus having them made for you by a societal script. From Arthur, when body language speaks volumes. Ooh, that's some snaps for that. Do you have any closing things to say on this, or anyone else? Going once?
I like
Going twice?
tie as symbolically male clothing over the cleavage.
Also a good stand-in for a phallus. All right. Next image, please, Bunny.
Okay. Well, this is a collage I put together, and it's reflective of a lot of thoughts I've had during the pandemic as we're coming out of this. And the theme of this is really two overlapping things: toxic masculinity and toxic individuality. There's a lot of overlap there. So these three pictures on the top, I had watched a documentary on what was called the Tsar Bomba, which was the largest nuke ever detonated. And watching the documentary, and then I found this image, the whole thing reminds me of a dick measuring contest, Oh, gee, mine's bigger than yours. Look what you think the Bravo is big. Look what we can do. That's the first thing I thought about. And also, if you notice the bomb itself, it's kind of phallic shaped. They all are kind of phallic shaped in one way or another. I don't know if that's subconscious or because of aerodynamics. Who knows? So that's what the first three images are, because that documentary just really brought it home to me, I keep hearing about jokes about men with power tools, And then there was, when I was growing up, some of my friends were trying to look for during the 4th of July, the loudest fireworks possible. And I was thinking, why? I don't like loud noises, you know? So, geez, am I supposed to, is because of things that go boom, it somehow defines me as a man? I don't think so. So now the next three are basically pandemic related, and this one here, as you can see with the mask being ripped apart, and this image really struck me because there was always the toxic masculinity there was men were being perceived as being effeminate if they were to wear a mask, you know? And that really, and this image really brought it home to me. And it's like, it also explains another thing why, about homophobia in particular, being this is Pride Month and all, there's this deep-seated fear from men about being perceived as feminine during sex, which doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And again, I'm puzzled by it, so I still am. Now this next one, if you can't see it, the sign, this is one of those anti-mask protests, which is ironic as the dude is wearing a mask. And it says, the sign says, sacrifice the weak, reopen Tennessee. And my thought was, oh, you think you're big and tough? Well, what if COVID-19 pays you a visit and then you're in the hospital hooked up to a ventilator? Does that mean you're inherently weak? That's kind of like a challenging question that I wanted to throw out to some of these clowns, you know. And then the last one was, I see this a lot. In fact, I saw a truck like this when I was in the town of Snoqualmie, Washington yesterday. A pickup truck rolling by of 2 American flags. And to me, that strikes me as insecurity. And again, it's like we were talking about masking. You're trying to project something. When I see something like this, I think that you are suffering from deep insecurity or some kind of inner trauma or pain, and that you're doing this performance to try to tell everybody, oh, everything's fine with me, you know, I'm a good, strong, healthy guy, male American, blah blah blah. And my thought is, really? So yeah, just a collection of thoughts for this. And the individuality part is like, I don't care about anybody else. I can go it alone and stuff like that. So it's just a mixture of things here.
Thanks, Brian, for sharing. We got some great comments in the chat. Roger, do you want to read those aloud? You do such a great job at that.
So one, looking at this, like Brian, this is a beautiful collage, because in this you have brought together several other different. So if I look at it as we're taking canvas and we're painting in the borders right now to help everyone else with their art find how to explore this space, man, that's an edge piece right there that you got. You definitely, this might even be a corner. So looking at how this works, guns, swords, and missiles are all objects that have been brought up as phallic substitutes, specifically in written and visual form. You have masculinity equated with violence from Rory. Nationalism as fueled by masculinity from Doug. From Bunny, who goes about their like attractiveness, they would be more attracted to men with the feminine traits versus super masculine, because overly masculine feels like violence or the potential for that. And that's an interesting point that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 follow-ons on that, from Alexia, from Gazelle, from Marcus, from Raquel. And it's so intriguing that how intertwined with this concept that we're thinking about, that masculinity and violence must be melded together, to the point where Bunny asked earlier, would it even exist? Would masculinity exist in the absence of violence? So that's something I can touch on later in the conversation point, because I think it would.
Well, there's another thing I wanted to add, Roger. You just brought up something else. So I wish I would have, I wanted to put, I couldn't find one. I wanted to put like a scene from one of the various like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because when you talk about violence and masculinity, one of the things I've noticed, especially as I've gotten older, I went back and I would like last Halloween, I saw some of the horror movies I grew up to, like especially the slasher flicks, and there was one thing in common: they were deeply misogynistic. I mean, not just the slasher genre, but the whole horror genre in particular really came across to me as misogynistic, because when something bad would happen to, say, the woman was usually scantily clad or naked, and the man generally wasn't. So that imagery, as I've gotten older and after Me Too, is really just uh, that connection really came forth over the last like a few years.
I would ask a question about masculinity. And is this symbolic of masculinity, or is it symbolic of masculinity in a culture that is trying to make everyone adapt or change to be like the status quo?
Yeah, pretty much so. This is the way I think, like in this society, this image is what I've always viewed as what masculinity was being portrayed as. And it never made sense to me, because like I said, I don't like loud noises, and I had zero interest in owning a car or a truck. And I never understood the fascination with, the American fascination with automobiles and all that. And so it's like these are constructs that are manufactured, by that the society manufactured. And it's like, really? Says who? And it's like another reason why I've never made it far up the corporate ladder, because I have a conscience, and generally the more power and wealth accumulates, someone else is usually at someone else's expense. And that's not me at all. So
Thanks for sharing that, Brian. I'm not sure how many pieces we have left, and in the interest of making sure we can see all of them and also hit our time frame, are there any closing sentiments before we go on to the next art piece?
Great piece, Brian.
thank you very much.
The dialogue that's been started with each of these art pieces are really important. And I don't want to take away from that. And I want to continue the conversation. I just want to make sure that we also get to see all of the art.
Oh, snap. Initial thoughts before I weigh in. I always like doing the opposite.
This is heartwarming immediately. I love the stare of him to her.
I really enjoy it, especially the sharp contrast that we see here versus our last piece.
I see like devotion, and Father's Day is a hard day for me every year. And this is simultaneously everything that I needed to see, and also like just enough to feel like crying in a good way, in a good way.
I feel like the image here of a father and a daughter, presumably, his love gives her the strength to look beyond, in a sense. She's looking away out into the world. She's ready to face the world because she has that foundation.
I would love to name what Marcus just put in the chat. They said, I think this is a good example of masculinity without violence and also removing the stereotype of absent Black fathers. Thanks, Marcus. Yeah.
So this weekend was Saturday was Juneteenth, and which allowed me the time to come up with this one. And like today is Father's Day. So it's like whenever we were going to do this, it was going to fall on a holiday. And I wanted to represent and respect and commemorate the holiday it was going to land on, regardless. So that's first and foremost with this. But second, this day is a hard day. And it's a hard day, I think. And Mother's Day, I think, is also hard for different reasons and for often similar reasons. And so I wanted to like put an image that I felt that was very strong and very, it's just, this is like, I don't want to take anything away from it by telling you more about it. It was just a perfect moment of two perfect beings. And I think that's kind of how I feel about that. And I also think we needed an example of masculinity that is positive. It clearly exists, but it's so hard because of what the word means. I put it earlier in the chat of like how much of it feels like an oxymoron, the nature of toxic masculinity. And it almost seems like the antithesis of femininity. It always seems like it is like this weird binary polar opposite thing. And I don't think it is. And I needed this to prove to me that. So this is the start of the praxis of what I want to create about like redefining the word. So thank you.
From Marcus in the chat, indeed, masculinity is not inherently toxic. It's like magic. It's all in how you wield it. And from Doug, our society has created a false dichotomy between the masculine and the feminine. It's hardwired into our language, our expressions. Thank you for this share, Arthur. This is a whole mood by itself. Looking at the visual echoes in the image, one of the things is that we can notice that their hairstyles are mirrored. Their postures are mirrored and yet reflected through interpretation. One of the things that's very common, especially if you have a small child that looks up to you, is that they will mimic your facial expressions and tell you everything about yourself you never wanted to know. So in looking at this image, specifically as chosen for our focus topic, for the submission agent, Arthur, I do ask you, what went into your thought process for selecting this image, for curating this from your collection for this presentation?
I'm very similar to Marcus. I feel like my first group meeting was seeing you talk. And there's something about the resonating nature of that and understanding that because we talked about this last time, we talked about this, but this idea of if you don't have role models, like how do you resonate? What is the representation of something if you don't know what exists? And oftentimes you either have to become it or you have to see it in like some other people. And your presentation of masculinity, femininity through a non-binary lens has better helped me think about those concepts and those definitions. And so that is my Father's Day gift to you right there. In addition to that, it is kind of looking for the positive. And so it's fascinating sometimes doing street photography because you're just like, it makes you a better, not just photographer, but like artist, because you just start seeing stuff. You start witnessing and you start when you bear witness to something beautiful, then you have to share it. You have to, like, it becomes part of your DNA. And there's something very beautiful about this. Just, just black skin, black faces, black people make black magic, so. And so because of that, like, it is that, like, okay, so now I'm a conduit. So now I have this power. So let me bring this to other people. Let's, like, even if we're not doing an art share and we're just doing this on surface level and you see the image, you're going to feel something because you just felt something when you saw this. That's how powerful it is. That's what magic is. And it makes me a wizard. It makes me like a member of Black Hogwarts. It makes me do these kind of things. And that there is a beauty to that. And so I don't want to disrespect that. It's like I have to do something with it. And there is a power to that, to Marcus's point earlier in the chat. It's like, okay, so now that I have magic, what do I do with it? And so let's put it out in the world and see what good I can make of it. And so that's the thing that like really resonated for me, outside of like a lot of my other images. It's like, I'm good, but no, this is great. And then why is this great? And let me interrogate it for myself to further let it change my DNA so I can change yours.
Oh, look at you slithering into our hearts with your magic. That was beautiful. Oh man. All right, I'm gonna give everybody a last 10 seconds to just breathe in this melanin magnificence here. Yeah, I know you heard that, Marcus. All right, let's go to the next slide, Bunny, if you would be so kind. Oh,
so we have 2 more art shares and about 6 minutes left. I think one of the art shares is from a guest that's not here. So I would suggest, and I'm open to group feedback, if we spend the majority of the time on this and leave the additional art image in the PDF. So we hit our time frame.
Oh, is the last image from Oak Tea?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll speak on it. So then we got 3 minutes for each art share. So let's just be.
Yep. I'm just waiting for Raquel to type in the chat so I can read.
I'll be talking a bit high because it's faster. So, and the other one will be speak off also. Well, I choose this tune particularly because, well, the first one actually is just, well, shadow. And to be honest, take this on any place. If you don't know me, you probably will say, that's a guy. Well, short hair, suit, jacket on. So shadows, well, no gender on here. It's like wherever, do it. I didn't want to think much of it. I just wanted to like pose and do it. And yeah, the jacket on the shoulder, the short hair combined to pull it off. If I was with the dress, I would be able to do the same thing without showing my face or other body part. On the left one, well, actually the clothes are all from the feminine section. Actually, those are mama jeans. But I wanted to rock like let's say, I don't remember now the movie, but whatever. I got inspired from a scene with Leonardo DiCaprio, wherever, with those strings. So I tried to do a very, like it was talked here before, the shoulders and stuff. For me, it's hard, especially because, well, I do have big boobs. It's hard to just like hide them, and I could, but I didn't want to. I was like, no, it's part of me. It's part of my also male side. They are here. I don't want to hide them. And as always, mirrors are part of my work. So I find myself all the time looking at mirrors and reflecting on what am I seeing.
From Roarie. So the framework of male posing that Alexia laid out, and in that, Roarie, they can identify some of the techniques that you use, Raquel. So that's beautiful. For my moderator question for you, since this brings up the gaze, specifically the male gaze as an aspect of masculinity, and now we have your gaze looking at yourself, looking at the lens, looking back at yourself. This is double reflexive, not quite inception, but close. What does your gaze bring to your art as it evokes masculinity?
Well, I like on the last topic, even if on femininity it was a bit more hard for me. With the masculinity, I'm a bit like, right now I'm sometimes confused, because sometimes I'm like, the more I can be seen as female because I'm weight gain and more curvy and more like boobs and stuff, the more I actually feel on the other scale sometimes more masculine. I don't know, it's a weird way sometimes, but I look in the mirror and I have times that I suppose for me, it is all in the eyes. If I'm looking very soothing and calm and soft, it's my way to say today I'm presenting more female. But most of my life, actually, I always rocked the very, sometimes terrifying, and sometimes people saying that I look like the villains, the female villains even, but the villain look. And usually it's when I'm more on and feeling more on the male side. I don't know. Again, we will be bumping into the violent stuff probably. But in here, I was looking straight. I was trying not to bump onto that gaze, but again, I was doing it. I suppose it is in the gaze. And for now, I still looking for an answer for that.
Oh, that's lovely. I also like how you make it clear that it is the directness of your gaze. Again, something that we can look at. We're defining masculinity in terms of confrontation, in terms of dominance, in terms of musculature, comportment, pose, tension. Gaze is one of the things. The eyes are the windows to the soul, and your soul is showing your masculine nature very clearly here. So that's wonderful.
I just wanted to thank you for saying when you talked about the curves in your body that those are yours. And so if you're masculine, then they are masculine. And I just really appreciate that.
Thank you. I will be reading all, but to not take more time to the next.
Oh, did the bunny freeze? There we go. So let me pull up the notes here, which is Wild Rose. Okay, so this piece is from a dear friend of mine, Oak T, submitted for this. Oak T is a Copic artist, so this is actually all done manually, usually with the markers that you see here, and these are all done live on stream. So one of the things that's important to look at for this element is that Oak's art, most typically, because of their own queerness and their preoccupation with the feminine form, they mostly draw women. However, they opened it up to their community that if everyone would vote and literally vote with their time, with their dollars. So the way that you vote on Twitch is for every minute that you watch, you get one vote. And if there were 150,000 votes, then Oak would draw a male character. It was fully funded in like 3 days on there. And so I asked them to present this, like to submit this for the art, because what this is how do you change your initial style, your style that has become definitive of your artwork, to then evoke a male character. And so for the elements that are here, and there are many things in the chat that, this is going to be so good. So one is to be able to show an exposed chest, because under the terms of service for broadcast, most of Oak's art cannot show any full chest, even though they would very much like to draw that because they are thirsty. The second is that the jawline is shifted here. So while, and it has been mentioned in the chat that this is absolutely Bishonen, this is anime manga, that is because for evoking masculinity in cultures outside of the US, Oak is heavily influenced by the Japanese art styles, where manliness is much more in the softness of the male gender. And so you have the shirt, it's the collar being a specific button-down type of collar, it's the uprolled sleeves, it is the heaviness of musculature, it is the strength in the hands, all coming together to say, this character is masculine, this character is read as male. And as an artist who is having to do that, because so this is done, Oak does the pencils, the inks, and the coloring, all of this is happening from one person's vision. This is how they took all of their expression that they usually put into evoking the feminine and then turning that into the masculine. And in my little blurb here, so I talked about the hands, I mentioned the abs, they love the abs, they're very proud of the shadowing on the abs. The shadowing along the clavicle, the meeting of the jawline to the ear, they had to work on 2 or 3 times because they kept turning the entire image from masculine to trans just based on the corner of the jawline and the center part underneath the earring. 1 or 2 other elements. So this is part of the series, and this is the Witch of the Wild Rose. In the Length of Flowers, Wild Rose is one that represents masculinity. So there are many elements here that tie together all into taking that and saying, this is a boy witch from this series. There we go. And so we've got, yes, so comments from Marcus. Bishonen literally translates to beautiful boy, because there you go, beautiful boy, Bishonen. So the shirt as armor from Doug, and the abs definition presents as very male. And then in agreement with Bunny, the face seems to be gender neutral. So since this is our last piece too, right? I think we're at the last part of the deck. But also to be sure, like, are there any questions from anybody in the chat that I can answer from the really long list of notes that I sent this poor artist who couldn't be here because they are broadcasting this later today. So they're in prep right now. Shirt armor. Thank you for the, yes, that Rory dropped a link in the chat to see the rest of this. And then from Brian, I always noticed there was a softness in the male image with anime. Yeah. So the extra hand. For all of the witch series, one of the things that in the character verse that OT has created here is that witches are typically identified by extra body parts. So there is always an extra part in every image, and it's up to you to find it. So in this one, it's pretty obvious because the hands are so important for masculinity. This is, in fact, that witch's extra hand. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, there's a long one from Arthur, and then the markings on the skin and the extra eye. Somebody found the extra eye. Yeah, that's actually this witch's eye. but it also draws attention to the chest and to that one area that is taboo and verboten in all the rest of Oki's work, to be able to say, like, here's a chest. I, an artist, am capable of drawing this, even though society won't let me display it. Yeah, here we go. I think that brings us to close. Do we have any final remarks from our founders? No, everybody's all wrapped up and happy.
My computer died like 3/4 of the way through that. That's sad. But I love this piece. And I especially love this. The little eye in the clavicle space, like the open and all-seeing heart. And I love that being sort of, it's evoking very much like the, what does masculinity look like without violence vibe? Like clarity, insight, this sort of like directing of the energy kind of thing. Thank y'all so much for all of the art that you've shared today and how lively and delicious the chat has been. The transcript is saved, so don't worry. And I took a lot of cute behind the scenes, so that'll be on Patreon for all y'all to check out later.
The heads up, we have decided to change or transition or try new things as far as art shares go. So we will be doing a webinar series. Should I announce it? Should we wait? What do you think? I'm looking to Bunny and Lior.
Sure.
All right. So in July, Bunny and I will be hosting a webinar journaling series. Forgive me, I'm going to jumble the words because we titled it and then it immediately slipped out of my mind. I was very distracted that day. It's not my fault. It's about perfectionism. Is that the one that we're doing in July?
That one, the July one, where it's like the connecting with our feelings.
Oh, the how to feel. That's not the real word for it, but that's where we're going. So it'll be a half an hour journaling session. So I remembered one thing.
Yeah. Perfectionism, I think, is gonna be like October.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
With a special guest speaker, but I don't want to give it away. I see their face.
They might be among you right now and you would never know it. And our guest for masculinity for the conversation piece next week is our dear Ro. So hope to see y'all then. I'll be probably tuning in from a very weird time zone, but hopefully I have the Wi-Fi to be there.
So the conversation is next Sunday, the 27th, same time, 1 p.m. Super excited.
Thanks everybody for the ridiculously marvelous participation. You are, this community never ceases to astound me. Have a great Sunday.
Yes. Love you all.
Thank you.
Safe travels, Lior.
Thank you.